flooding and cyclones have brought into focus how vital our wetlands are as sinkholes for water. But in Aotearoa, we've already drained or lost 90% of them. New regulations in 2020 provided stricter protections, but the government recently loosened them. Why? Well, Nicola Toki is CEO of Forest and Bird, and she also worked for Fonterra project managing wetlands. Tanakwe, welcome to the program. So let's understand, how important are wetlands as a natural flood defence?
Oh, look, they are vital. And I mean, it's the perfect time for us to be having this conversation right now, right? When you see what's happened in Auckland and for the communities on the East Coast. They do a lot of things. They hold water, excess water, during intense rain events, so they protect us from flooding. They also alleviate the impact of drought, because they can release water during drier periods. And they are significant when it comes to carbon sequestration. And so I suppose the frustration for us, for example, at Forest and Bird and all of our members and supporters is we have a government on the one hand saying we're all about the climate change and we're all about, you know, making sure that we're reducing carbon, and we've got something sitting there that naturally does it for free. Yeah,
OK, but the government's going to argue in its freshwater policy statement of 2020 that it moved to put in strict regulations about not constructing on wetlands. It did walk back that policy slightly at the end of last year, or they say it's slightly. What did you make of that walk back?
The walk back is really significant, and I imagine most of the public doesn't know. So just to walk back from the walk back, 90% of all of New Zealand's wetlands have been destroyed in the last 200 years. So of the 2.5 million hectares of wetlands we had all over the country, we've only got 10% of that left. What the walk back does, and it was because 21 industry groups pressured the government to allow for housing developments on wetlands, landfills on wetlands, expansion of coal mines on wetlands, which flies in the face of our contribution to climate.
So that's what you're saying. But those sectors were saying that the restrictions on wetlands that were put in 2020 and now been slightly walked back, basically cut off industry from doing things like, you know, getting aggregate for quarries, or restricting any possibility of urban development, those kinds of things. There needs to be a compromise here, doesn't there?
I think the compromise has already occurred. I don't buy that argument at all. When you've got 10% of a remaining habitat left of a thing, and that means you've got the remainder of the country to find the bits for the quarries. I guess my question would be, how would the people of Te Tai Rāwhiti be feeling right now about the idea that the government was going to open up consenting pathways to put housing on wetlands when we've seen the destruction and the loss of those communities in the last month?
All right, so you're saying that even if a project was of national significance, and I think that's the words in the actual legislation, it's worth billions, hundreds of jobs, would you still be opposed to that going ahead on an existing wetland?
The previous standards for fresh water back in 2020 did make allowances for nationally significant projects. What this does, though, and it is because the government has bowed to pressure from industry, is it says that you can now have a consenting pathway, so that if you want to wreck some more wetlands, you go down and you apply for a consent. Now, the challenge with that is that the cost is going to be significant in terms of flooding, in terms of drought, in terms of carbon sequestration. And to give you an example, peat wetlands worldwide hold more than twice as much carbon as tropical rainforest across the world, and in New Zealand contribute 6% of our agricultural emissions.
All right, so I mean, you're outlining the importance there, but the government is still arguing that these changes are at the margin, and that they were also needed because the threshold was so high, restorative work on wetlands couldn't even go ahead, so they need to create a pathway for that.
Yeah, so I mean,
you don't buy that?
I don't buy that at all. That is a nonsense sort of a point, because if you've got a fraction of an existing habitat remaining, why would you be talking out both sides of your face so that you're allowing for the destruction?
You're calling the government two-faced, right?
on one hand, and saying, oh no, but it doesn't allow restoration over here. Just don't destroy them in the first place and reap the benefits of that.
Well, if they are destroyed, can they not be restored? I mean, have we, because we've got only 10% left, is that all we're ever going to have?
No, they can be restored. And, you know, we've got some great examples of that, and particularly through our farming community. Pāmu, for example, have got some good examples of restoration of wetlands. Fonterra have put significant money into trialling it in various areas, and even Forest and Bird has volunteer restored wetlands. The problem is, though, so we're having a conversation about cost to the community and economic progress, right? the cost of restoring a wetland is exponentially higher than just looking after it in the first place, letting it filter your nutrients, letting it protect you from floods, letting it help you in
That's a
droughts.
mindset, right, isn't it? I mean, people look at wetlands and they don't see anything of particular beauty for some people. It's not obvious.
For
and
me.
So, well, but you're a special case. But for other people, the general consensus would be like, that's just a soggy swamp there.
Yeah.
Let's build over it. It's not doing anything useful. So how do you change that mindset?
Yeah, well, so this really, I find this really frustrating. So you're right, someone like me thinks a wetland is great. We haven't given it great marketing. So what have we done? We've called them swamps, we've called them bogs, and we've encouraged people to drain them over time, right? And we've even paid people to do that. But if we were thinking about both sides of the ledger, right, and we were focusing on an investment mindset, and we were even looking to our policy tools, we've got an entire chapter in the emissions reduction plan about nature-based solutions, right?
Yeah, so these are nature-based solutions, aren't they?
100%.
Wetlands are they?
Wetlands are nature-based solutions, and they're protecting our communities. They're helping with people's health, well-being, mental health, and for the Māori community, they have traditionally for hundreds of years been their supermarkets, and we've taken that away from them. So it is about our ability to continue as a nation, but we have to shift our mindset. We can't keep doing the same thing.
We keep talking about nature-based solutions, but if you're a city dweller, you're going to say, what relevance is a wetland to me in the middle of Auckland when I've got a flood situation going on? I've got stormwater to deal with it instead.
Yeah, that's right. And for city people, it's really important. So we have a couple of examples here in New Zealand that are currently underway. Kiwi2 Park in Wellington, the regional council have invested significantly into wetland restoration for carbon purposes. In Christchurch is for flood protection purposes, Te Kuru, but they're also investing in walking tracks and all of the ways people can enjoy them. The best example that I can think of is Colombo in Sri Lanka. So the city of Colombo got pretty munted in an intense rainfall event in 2010. The Parliament buildings went underwater, for example.
Right.
And so what they have done is they have invested significantly in about 20 kilometres square of wetlands throughout the city. Which the poorer communities are able to get food from, for example, people can recreate in, but it is protecting them from floods to the extent that when they have those same intense rainfall events now, that wetland or those interconnected wetlands are storing 27,000 Olympic swimming pools worth of water, millions of cubic litres, and they have not had a flood event.
And so that could be a model you're saying that we could look at in terms of future development.
Oh, look, the research has been done, people are doing it overseas, we just need to grip it up and get on with it.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Nicola Toki, CEO of Forest and Bird, talking about wetlands. We did put this to Environment Minister David Parker. He told us the regulation changes were at the margins and were made because there were unanticipated impacts like preventing quarries from producing aggregate for concrete. And he also said the new rules require there to be no net loss of wetlands.